Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Thanks for joining us today. We're with a special guest, Jamie Stillman, president and founder of EarthQuaker Devices. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've been over a few times, but we've never done a video together.
Yeah, no, we haven't. This is my first time.
Yeah, at least not here at
videos.
Sweetwater. We've done some over at your
at
place.
Our shop, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been, we've been keeping you busy, looking at your pedal board and checking out a new pedal that's coming out.
A fun day here.
Yeah, lots
a lot
going
of
on.
attention focused on what I do.
Yeah. So it's the EarthQuaker story is so fascinating to me because it's sort of the prototypical boutique pedal company builds up and takes over the world.
Yeah, it's just that regular old story that usually happens.
It's like 2004 is when you started the company officially, right?
Yeah, it was 2005 is like when I started applying the name EarthQuaker Devices to things and like trying, selling them to friends, putting them up on eBay or whatever. But yeah, I started tinkering probably just a year before that. It all started from like trying to fix my broken DoD 250 overdrive and then just getting obsessed with it until like, it morphed into building pedals, as it always does.
Well, there's a little more to the story than that, though, right?
We're done, right? That's it. That's the story of EarthQuaker.
Yeah. Did you have formal electronic training?
No, I did not. I didn't have any real electronics knowledge or training, but what I did have is like a background in design, graphic design, and I've been a musician forever, like literally as long as I can remember. And I feel like those two things worked hand in hand for like product development and things like that. And some of the electronic stuff just came really easy to me. Like the first time I saw the schematic for the DoD 250, I was just like, well, I know what this is. Like I know that I can follow this path. Like I don't know what's happening mathematically, but Google exists. Like YouTube University. Read electronics projects for musicians, which I think a lot of people in my field have learned from, and I'm still learning. I still have no formal training, but I know just enough to be dangerous enough to start a big company. I think.
But that's cool. You did. The company literally started in your house, and then you had basement people. What were
the basement dwellers. So for quite some time, it was just me in the basement of like one house in. Julie, our CEO, my wife, would come home from work and like put all the parts on the enclosure so I could put the circuit board in and wire, and like she would do the taxes and like file some of the business work. But like for the most part, it was just me for till I think New Year's Day 2010. An old friend of mine, his proper name is Jeff France, but I've known him since he was 14, so we call him Fedge because that was his childhood nickname. He's the first full-time employee, and it was just me and him in the basement working like 14 hours a day, just building pedals, getting them out, just like collecting dealers and stuff like that. And like every 6 months after he came on, like we would just bring in another person and another person and another person until we had 9 people working in a 350 square foot like room in my basement. And, like the house kind of smelled bad all the time. People were there working on pedals, and our daughters, they were real young then, were like, just called them the basement people. So that's where the name comes from, the basement people. Yeah, that was weird. Like there was a point in time where like we had some storm damage, and like both of our porches had like broken off basically, and we had to tear them out. And the only way to get in and out of our house was through a ramp through a side window. So like we had all the employees like climbing through the window in the morning, and the kids climbing out to get on the bus. Like there's like weird stuff like that that you get to deal with like working in someone's basement. Yeah.
Well, you do what you got to do to get the pedals out the door, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's crazy. So there had to be an interesting point that you would arrive at where you say, okay, I was running a record label for all these years, I was a musician, I was doing all this, and now I'm going to full-time, we're going to get a building and we're going to do this. Yeah,
they lost my mind, I think. Those like transitions were like, felt like really natural to me because, I started a record label like from Christmas money when I was like 13 years old and ran that till like my mid-20s, toured in bands. So I had all this like musical knowledge. And when that stuff all kind of died out, like I was never like terribly successful, but it could just go. And then I became like a tour manager for bands, and like that kind of made it so my schedule was like open to like explore these kind of things when I was at home. Like we had two like pretty much newborn kids, and like I was like on tour for half the year, but also home the rest of the time. And it's like, it just really freed it up to like kind of explore this thing with like low pressure, I would say.
Right.
And, you know, EarthQuaker really started with no plan. I didn't think I was starting a business. I was just kind of doing what I do, which is like, I think this is cool. I'll make a thing. I'll put it up and see if someone wants to buy it. If they do, great. If they don't, I'll move on. Like, I'm not putting ads out. I'm not telling people, but I was a part of some forums and put them up on eBay. And it's like, just like a fluke. Like, it caught on and just like spread word of mouth, and little by little it gradually grew until, you know, the money from one pedal would go into the next pedal, into the next one. So it was like, by the time that we had employees and by the time we moved out of the basement, there was like no debt, but there was like confusion because it was like we were growing rapidly and there was no like business plan for it. And, you know, I'm like a punk rock businessman. Like, I know how to like be like, this is $100. Give me $100. Thank you. Here is the product. Like, that's it. But, you know, luckily, Julie, my wife, came in and she, you know, recognized that like it was getting big. We needed to do something different. And she, you know, offered to come in and like kind of run the business side of it. And that's when we moved out. It was 2012. And that's when we moved out of the basement into our first shop. And she like whipped it into shape, you know, like
Right.
She started to recognize like, oh, there's a lot of orders coming in. There's not enough time in the day for like 7-8 people to do this stuff. Like, we need to hire people. So like one of the first things that she was there for a while, but like the first big hirings was like 8-9 people in one day. And like that turned out to not be enough. So like as we were hiring, we were growing to that scale. Like the more stuff that we could put out, like the more dealers were coming on. And it was, I mean, quite honestly awesome because it was like, it was really, really stressful for me personally, especially before she came on. I was losing my mind. But what was awesome is like people were coming to us. Like we never put ads in magazines. Like we never were like reaching out to stores. It was like one after another. It was like, yeah, sure, we'll fill this order until like, I don't know, 2013, 14, like that's when we started advertising and being like, all right, now we have a sales guy and stuff like that. So it's like learning on the job. And it just felt so natural, I think, for all of us. Like everybody who works at EarthQuaker, for the most part, learned what they do on the job and became like experts in it. And like it was nice to like be able to offer that opportunity to people and also be able to have that opportunity like ourselves, you know.
Right.
So yeah, it's just like it all fell into place in like the weirdest way.
Yeah,
like.
that's cool. What a great story.
Yeah.
I've been over and visited and toured the factory and your building and met the team. And one of the things that really stands out to me, and I think you touched on it there, is they're all really passionate. I mean, there's a definite culture of passion for music and sound and gear.
Yeah, there definitely is. Like most of the people who are there right now, like they've been there for a while. Like almost everybody who worked in the basement is still there, and they're like a manager of some sort. And like, you know, they all became experts like on their own accord. Like, you know, there's a little bit of asking like, hey, do you think you can figure this out? And they're like, got it. And we're even still doing that now. Like our most recent advancement is we brought in some automated machinery. So we brought in like a whole automated assembly line, which most people would like, you know, when you hear people be like, oh, that stuff's just made in China. Really, it's this automated assembly line that happens to be located in China because the labor there is significantly cheaper. We wanted complete control of this, and we grew to a point where like there's no way we could keep up with stuff by hand anymore. We can't keep going that way. Surface mount over the years had at one point like a bad reputation, but the reality is it's the future and it's great. They're like really high quality parts and they're still being made in large volumes. So it makes it so we can stay in business and like people can still build cool synths and cool pedals and cars and TVs and stuff like that. So we decided like, rather than outsource all this stuff, let's just buy all this stuff. Like we like to have as much under our control as we possibly can. We brought in this whole automated assembly line and like had a number of employees who are like, yeah, I would love to learn how to work that. And now they're experts on it, you know, within like 6 months. So it's like I said, it's really great to have these opportunities and to kind of give those opportunities to people. And we're super lucky that like so fortunate that there are people who are excited by that stuff. Like, and you know, they're by us. Yeah. Like we just seem to attract these people who like really love doing that stuff and appreciate it. It's cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. So take us through basically the journey a pedal goes through. Maybe this one isn't the perfect example because of the lockdown and supply chain and all those kind of things, but there has to be kind of a process to go through from getting the idea to getting it out the door.
So usually it just starts with an idea. It's usually like something that I'm thinking about where it's like, oh, does this exist? Let me look around and see, I think this might sound cool. If I see that it does, I'll buy that and just use it. Cool. Or if I buy it and use it for a little while and be like, yeah, it's kind of all right. Maybe something else could be a little bit better about it. And then I'll start tinkering on the breadboard. I call it that. Some people probably have a more scientific name for it, but I'm just messing around. Trying to see like what I can come up with. And usually I'll know within like a day, like, am I on to something here or am I just like wasting my time, like just on a whim, like something that I might only be interested in? So like a day or two I'll give it. And like if it passes, like I like to like put a bunch of time in, like 2 or 3 days, let it sit for a little while, come back, see, do I still like this? What do I like? What don't I like? Put it away for like a week. And that's like lately been like my design style. It's like a bunch of intensive work for a day or two, put it away for a week, bunch of intensive work. And then sometimes it'll be 6 months, come back to it and be like, oh, cool. Like sometimes you just need that break. So it's kind of back and forth like on how some things are really quick. Like the special cranker was a revision of the speaker cranker. And that was like a day. It's like I already knew what I wanted to do, and it worked out. And then there's a little bit of fine-tuning of the parts, things like that. The next step, circuit board layout, bring in the prototype circuit boards, make sure that dream can be a reality. Like when you build something on a breadboard and like all the parts are loose in the air and the wires are a certain length, like there's some magic to that. Like it's not magic, but there's like some principles that are at play there.
Sure.
Sometimes you put it into an enclosure and it lost the magic. Like it doesn't sound as good. Like maybe it's just that the trace is too short where it used to be a long wire or something like that. Like the impedance isn't quite correct. Like, and then it's like trying to chase down those bugs. Like, how do I fix this? Most of the time it works well. We do a little bit of prototyping back and forth. I give it out to about 10 people in the shop. I get some feedback. Kind of gauge, like, is this legit feedback or is this personal taste? Yeah. Do I need to look into this? Do I not need to look into this? Are they giving me feedback that, like, this sucks? Maybe you need to move on. Like, it's kind of doing a lot of that stuff. And then we just go through these, like, beta testing, like, all these prototype rounds, like, and especially, like, the bigger we get, like, the bigger our first runs are, the more laws there are in other countries, like, all these things that we got to do. So we have to do, like, compliance testing. We got to do, like, all of the, like, IP, all the IP stuff. And, like, through that whole process, we're, like, building, like, 10 pedals. 100 pedals, 500 pedals, like trying to gauge like how much time do we need to put into every one of these? How much does each one cost? Like all of this thought that goes into it. I feel like I'm giving away all of our secrets, but like, and there's like the whole marketing push is happening while that is going on. Like in that, that's a pretty big team of people for us, for a company our size is about 7 people. And it's like, every distributor in every country and every store, like they have their own like deadlines and stuff. And it's just like crazy moving target. And there are so many people involved in that process that by the time that the pedal comes out, it's been not since the start of the pedal, it's been about 6 months since we're like, this pedal has gone through the testing rounds. It is good to go. It is foolproof. It can be a product. It's about half a year before it like can actually come out, which I think there's a big misconception there where a lot of people think like, oh, you worked on this for a week and now it's out today. But it's like some of these things are like 2 years old. Like, like Aurelius right here. Like this, I started working on this in 2019, like 2020. Like, is come out in 2023. Like
right.
it's ridiculous, but that's just due to like how we choose to do things and the size of our company.
But it's all that stuff that you don't think about going on behind the scenes that all goes into making a product. I mean, you have to get it out there. You have to let people know. You have to have inventory ready to ship. You have to,
And it is like truly easier to just like draw up the plans and like hand over the schematic and like give them the artwork, and like some factory somewhere sends you back 10,000 units and you're like, here you go, because you're missing all of the like the learning curve, like all of this stuff. And that stuff is just really important to us, to like have the local jobs, to like make stable lives for like the people who work for us, and to like know that if anything goes wrong, we can stop it. Like we're the ones in control. We're not going to wait 8 years for the powder coated enclosures to show up. Like,
right.
It's just it's really important for us to have to have as much under our roof as possible, and I think we've kind of done it at this point.
Pretty much self-contained.
Yeah,
which is awesome. So my last question for you is, I'm curious. To me, the hallmark of the EarthQuaker pedals is that you can do the sort of traditional sounds with many of them, but there's all these extended things that you can do with them very in creative directions. Has there ever been something where you sent a pedal out and you hear something back and go, wow, I never had a clue it could even do something like that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things where I'm like, whoa, like that's weird. And like one of the biggest ones, I talk about it all the time, and it's the way I use is the rainbow machine. It's like a very polarizing effect. And I know that I hit this mode a couple times on it and just didn't think much of it. But like the first time I saw someone use it as like a chorus, and I was like, oh my God, like how is that sounds coming out of that thing? Because I was just like everybody else, obsessed with the pixie dust sound. Like, oh, it's like a magic wand, it's nuts. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh wow. And then you can kind of like build on it and make it crazier. That's like really like the first time I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. That's got to be really fun to see somebody creative take something you've made and be even more creative with it.
Yeah, I mean that's super enjoyable. Just even with every single pedal, like there's so many different styles of music and so many different types of players, and especially like people who are fans of EarthQuaker. We have like people who make straight noise to like really skilled like classical musicians, like that whole range, and everyone like finds a use in like the same products and like makes completely different sounding music with it. So that's like kind of inspires me to keep going with this, like make it traditional, make it easy to use, but also kind of like make it go haywire if it's called for, but like not so much that it's never like unmusical. Like I personally think like everything, you can turn the controls wherever, it's always going to be musical. There's some things that will test that, like the data corrupter. It's not always going to be musical, but like it's cool for the most part, so it's like it's worth it.
Right.
But like, yeah, that's I try to make it so things are easy to use and they're always musical, like no matter like what style. And I feel like I usually accomplish that, but I'm willing to be challenged.
It's so much fun to see how people use them and the sounds that they get out of them, and you have so many options in the line. And clearly, your passion for music and the sounds and the musicians really comes across. And I think that's such an important part of the success of EarthQuaker.
Oh, it definitely is for all of us. I mean, it's music first, really, right. Not so much business and electronics. It's all about music.
Yeah, that's so exciting, and we're so glad to have you here as part of the Sweetwater family as well. Thanks for making that trip over to see us today.
Of course, I love coming here. It's great.
Come back.
I will.
Come back soon. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us here. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.